Somebody said, good to be back. Oh, yeah, Jedediah, good to be back. You missed 2 sessions. How? Okay, you got it on the shared videos. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for recording. Miss Mbin said, same here in the world in Lesotho. I see you. I see what you mean. In the world. Corporate governance is a problem. Okay. Where's my wonderful guest today?
Hey, yeah.
Hey, darling. I have missed you.
I miss you too, Elinam. I miss you 2 weeks. You left me last week.
Yes,
where did you
go? Something I'll let you guys know about soon. It's something exciting. I'll let you know about it
soon. Great. That's good.
Oh, wonderful. So, give me a rundown. What happened last week? Should we fire Kofi? What happened last week?
Oh, he did a good job, I must say. Yes, asked very interesting questions. We actually, I think for the first time, we had some guests actually speak. They joined in to speak and ask their questions. Yes, really lovely, interesting questions, very practical. And we addressed this as much as we could. Very amazing section. So I think we have it on YouTube, right? Yes. So if you didn't make it last week, kindly go to YouTube, the PBI Global or the People Building Institute, and you'll find the recording. But it's worth it. I mean, one of the businesses that stood out to me was a barber shop, and I didn't expect that, honestly, but apparently they haven't even been registered at all. They don't have any records at the company's registry or the ORC from what we learned. And so they have to do things from scratch. But as it stands, there is no registration. 2 friends, money made, they pay their staff, and they have a staff count of about 8, which is a lot. Yeah.
They pay their people staff.
Yeah. And then they share the rest of the money between the 2 of them. And if they feel like putting some into the business, then they put into the business. So clearly there was no structure. So we talked about that business a bit. I mean, the person who asked the question is one of the partners. He asked the first part of the question. It was quite limited. So he came back again to ask, and I hope the advice worked and he took it in the first place. And that way it would work. But it was a very, very lovely session.
I'm jealous now. Well, so guys, when I'm not around, you ask questions. I'll stop coming so that you'll be asking questions.
Yeah.
So today we're going to do the summary. I really don't want you to go. Can we do another question and answer so that we can push you to next week?
Ooh.
Because I don't.
So whatever Kofi says.
Please don't give Kofi the chance. He will make us stay here till next year. So our co-founder Kofi says that we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, so you can share that link to everybody. You can watch on Facebook and YouTube if you are unable to continue on Zoom. So check out PBI Global or the People Building Institute on YouTube and Facebook to watch the live stream and the recorded sessions after the stream is done. Okay, so corporate governance in a nutshell. After all the things you've taught us, I'm going to hand over to you to run us through the key points that you want us to remember after we say see you later to Kesua. I want you to help us to remember the important things about corporate governance that you want us to take away from this PBI session. So okay. I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. So I prepared a very short slides. I'll share my screen. Okay, so briefly, like you're already aware, we're talking about corporate governance, and I'm presenting. My name is Lovetta. So first off, when we started last 2 weeks, we talked about sole proprietorships, companies, we talked about board of directors, and then the advisory board. I ran us through that quickly. We said that mainly the kind of business registrations that go on in Ghana are the sole proprietorships and then the companies or the registered entities. Sole proprietorship basically means that there is no separate legal person from the natural person who is registering the business. So whatever liability or asset that comes with the business is directly associated with the person who registered it. And then I cited that even when you check the registration of business name certificate, you see that the TIN, the taxpayer's identification number of this individual, is same as that of the business. And so you can't have two people being sole proprietors, like the name clearly states, it's sole. So it's one person who is associated with this business, and the business is identified as the person. So when you look at business registrations, basically in Ghana, there are two regulations. There are the Companies Act 2019, Act 992, that regulates businesses that are duly registered or incorporated as companies or as limited by guarantees, which are the foundations and the NGOs, etc. We have that act, and then we also have the Business Names Act. The Business Name Act goes for just sole proprietors. So what it means legally is that you are only registering a business name. So for instance, my name is Lovetta Ajiman. If I register a sole proprietorship, then it means that aside my natural name, Lovetta Ajiman, there is a business name I have as an individual, which is, for instance, assuming PBI is a sole proprietorship. The business name is PBI, but I am PBI essentially. So that's the scenario or the kind of the nature of sole proprietorships. With companies, the law would term them as incorporated entities. They are regulated by the Companies Act, and there could also be other acts which regulate them based on the industry in which you find yourself. So if you're in petroleum, you'd have the Petroleum Commissions Act also regulating you, and a host of others. If you are listed, you could have the SEC code also regulating you. And aside all of these, they come with their own should I say, corporate governance expectations. So the Companies Act gives you a very wide range umbrella expectation for corporate governance. The SEC tones it down a bit to the companies that they regulate as well. Aside that, we also said that there is the Ghana Corporate Governance Code, which was recently launched, and also that gives corporate governance guidelines. When it comes to the law, whatever corporate governance requirement it gives you, it's do it, or when you default, you have to pay a penalty, or there has to be some sort of punitive measures for default. But with the corporate governance code, there are guidelines that sort of guiding light to achieving a right governance structure, because corporate governance is not cast in stone. So long as you follow what the law says, which is very wide and umbrella, it's easy for you to go by what the codes also say. And where you're not able to apply something that the code says, there is something called comply or explain, a term that we often use to say that it's either you comply by what the code expects you to do, or you explain in your annual report. Now, these are for companies that are incorporated or entities that are incorporated. So a sole proprietor, I think their law is just about half a page or just a page, very brief, no legal obligations, not as stringent as we have with companies. And with companies, we have the Companies Act, and like I said, any other regulation that oversees your business activities. If it's FDA, you have to check what the FDA is saying about your shito production or whatever production you're into, whatever food production you're into. So that's how it is when it comes to the regulation side. Now, with the board of directors, it's also regulated by the Companies Act. If you're a registered entity, it will tell you that there are 5 requirements for who can be a director. First of all, a body corporate. When I say a body corporate, I mean an entity, a corporation, a company cannot be a director of another company. A director always has to be a natural person, an individual. You can't have somebody who is less than 18 years being a director to a board. So if you have a company which was willed to a son who is less than 18 and you want to involve the son some way, somehow, that son cannot be a director. We have that the person has to be of sound mind, so you can't have a mentally unstable person being a director. The person also has to be does not have to be an undischarged bankrupt or anybody who has criminal charges associated to him. And the last thing is that the person must not have been a director of a company that went solvent in the last 5 years. So first of all, like I said, it's very umbrella, because you would definitely, or the probability that you go for somebody who is less than 18 years as your director is very rare, or somebody who is mentally unstable. So it gives you room for all of these things to take place. But bottom line is that if you are only registered as a company, then the law really expects that you have these structures in place. And the law will tell you that at least you have to have 2 directors. You can't have anything less than that. If you have 2 directors, one of them must be ordinarily resident in Ghana. So if you have any partnership with a foreign entity and they want to take over the board and they want to have their people filed as directors, there are only 2, but they insist that they can't be in the country, then the law can also not have them as directors of the entity. And so this, as I said, is related to incorporated entities. But I advise that based on the Corporate Governance Code, which caters for sole proprietors, companies, even the informal sector, there is a structure also known as the advisory board, where you mimic the board of director nature. You have people, the purpose of having a board of directors is strategic leadership for efficient, effective decision making. So you have that set up. But the difference between the board of directors and then the advisory board is that the board of directors have legal liability because the law gives them their obligations. So if they fail to play their role as required by the law, then they would have to answer to the law. With the advisory board, the law does not give them that obligation. They don't have any dealings with the law, and so there's no legal liability on any individual who is on your advisory board. And we also said that if you want somebody to be on your board, either advisory or board of directors, and you're starting afresh, it's always good to go for the low-hanging fruits, people you know but are not overly familiar with. You have business relations, or there's some sort of extended relation. So, there's that kind of respect, but you're not too familiar, so that when they advise you, you just, walk over it and not implement, because you want them to give strategic guidance on mentorship for your business. We also said that usually we have people starting off as sole proprietors, but now the issue is about, I really want to do this and I'm going through probably proof of concept. You're now about to test the market. You're now about to evaluate your business ideas, tweak a thing or two. And the obligation of setting a board of directors can be a bit daunting and heavy for a young entrepreneur who is trying to start things. And I think many a times the reason people fail to have these structures in place, the advice I gave was start with the advisory board. So you mimic the board of directors structure. You're still giving importance to the structure. You are still benefiting from strategic leadership as you would have if you had a proper board of directors in place. Go through your proof of concept, and at that time, your advisory board is aware of what you're doing or what you're going through, so they'll guide you through it. Now, after 3 years, probably, when you have gone through that and you have come out successfully, there is a legal process to go through to convert your sole proprietorship into company. You would incorporate it's a different thing, but you go through the incorporation process basically, and then you can officially now transfer your board of directors to your advisory board to your board of directors, and then you have your company running. And as the company is growing, some points you would have sub-board committees based on your business and the key areas. You can have your audit committee, you can have your HR committee, you can have your compliance committee, etc., etc. But you know that you have these sort of branches of the board that really do the work of the board, and then the board sits to make decisions. So we went through this structure. Then the next thing was also on shareholders and directors. I have talked about what the legal requirements are to make you qualified as a director. And also about the legal obligations, the law will say that the directors have fiduciary duty to make sure that the company is running and succeeding, And so the law expects that at least twice a year, every 6 months, there is a board meeting to discuss the operations of the business. Now, a proper businessman will tell you that that's too long a time, especially when you have so many activities going on for the business. So they would say that quarter is advisable, and really that's what standard practice is. But as I said before, that the law is very open, trying to allow as many entrepreneurs, business owners as possible, so loosely would say 2. It also expects that there is an AGM, an annual general meeting of shareholders, directors, auditors once a year, where there are other such meetings. You can call it the extraordinary general meeting, the EGM. But basically the meetings is what's expected, right? Now, what kind of arrangements between the shareholders and directors, or who even are the shareholders and then the directors? The shareholders are sort of the owners of the company. Now, I say owners of the company because I would introduce what we call the beneficial owners of the company. A beneficial owner is the one who actually gets the money from the company. So I may found a company or I may start a company, but I do not want to be on record as the owner of this company for various reasons. And so I have some sort of agreement with Elinam that go on and own this company in your name for me, but we have a written document that I'm the beneficial owner. So on paper, Elinam is the shareholder, and then we have the directors. But that's also another legal governance side that I won't bore you with so much. So where we have the shareholders appoint the directors. Now the shareholder says that what I want is my money at the end of the year, dividends, right? But the directors, I want you to target provide leadership vision for this company. And so they go on an agreement. The shareholders, if it's more than one, usually they have shareholders agreements between themselves as to what rights does the kind of shares I hold give me, right? But from the shareholder to the director level, there is the terms of engagement, some call it the appointment letter. I mean, it depends on what your terms are. The law can be very flexible, so it depends on what your specific terms are, so that you would tweak it a bit, give your director some restrictions or not much restrictions. But at the end, you basically appoint the director for the purposes that I mentioned earlier. Then the directors amongst themselves, there is the board chair, there are the independent directors, there are the executive directors, they are the non-executive directors. So I'll briefly take us through this. The board chair is the head of the table of the board, basically leading the board to make its decision and guiding board processes. The independent director has no relation whatsoever to do with the company, just picked randomly from somewhere based on his or her expertise in that field. The non-executive director has some sort of relation to do with the company, probably was nominated by the shareholder. And so, or works with the sister company of this company we're talking about. And so there's some relation, so they are not independent, but they are non-executive. An executive director means that maybe the CEO or MD, they are active in the day-to-day of the business. And so they are executive, they are part of the business. So the non-executive will be one who is not involved in day-to-day, neither are they also independent, they're sort of in between. So the shareholders have agreements with these people, allows them to run. Then the chair during the AGM will report to the shareholder, in as much as all the other directors are there, the chair will report to the shareholders and tell them how well the company performed in the year under review, whether they didn't reach their targets, whether they made a loss or they made profits, and whether they will declare dividends or they won't declare dividends. Now, the MD or CEO, who is the executive director, though part of the board, reports the company's activities to the board. So oftentimes during meetings, we say that quarterly reports on business activities or business operations, finance reports, etc., etc. And then the board actually needs to discuss these matters: budget approval, approving major transactions, operations that has to do with HR, that has to do with data security. All of those things they will discuss during the board meeting, and then they'll make decisions based on that, or they would discuss what the next steps are based on that. Now, there are some things that you have to take to the shareholders. The major financial decisions or transactions, they go to the shareholders after the board has discussed it. They go to the shareholders for approval. If it's outside the AGM, they can approve it by a written resolution. That means that all the shareholders have to sign. And where a decision has to be made outside the board meeting, it can also be done through a written resolution, and everybody has to sign on that as well. So I think I've taken us through the reporting lines already when I said the MD reports to the board. MD is part of the board but reports to the entire board, and board chair and the entire board reports to the shareholders during the meeting, and that's how it goes. And for their legal obligations, as I mentioned earlier, the meeting, the AGM, etc. So if this is a structure that we are looking for, then what exactly is the right governance structure? So first, there has to be a structure system that ensures effective and efficient decision-making and strategic leadership. In as much as it's not cast in stone, and people are, especially those who register companies, you find, I mean, we went through all the weird structures, right? The husband and wives, the same person who is shareholder, board chair, MD, all of those people who are taking all the powers and positions. They feel like, yeah, we have governance. Yes, we are a registered company. Yes, RGD, the law is fine with us, right? But if your structure is not effective, there is no efficiency in the decision-making process, there is no strategic leadership, then it is not the right governance structure, and of course you will not reap the benefits thereof. So we said that if you really want the right governance, then the soul of it, the crack of it, the core of it, that the pivot and the center of it is a qualified governance advisor, especially because it's one that always has to be fine-tuned to suit the company in accordance with legal requirements and governance codes. Then you need somebody who knows these things and is able to advise as to what would work best for your organization, also without putting a strain on the business, right? But three things, there are so many pillars of the right governance structures, but three things that, based on what I have noticed is wrong in Ghanaian governance structures, I have brought out here, would be accountability, transparency, and fairness. So there was a question last week, and the young lady says she and her brother registered the companies, they are shareholders, they are the directors, and she's not sure, they're not even able to hold proper board meetings because she's not, I mean, they talk, but you know, it's not the actual board meeting that there should be. And my answer to her is because they are not able to be accountable to themselves as they should. They are not very casual relationship. Like I was telling you earlier, that whoever you bring on board to be part of your board should be one that you're not casual with, so that there is some sort of respect, right? But here is a very casual relationship. They can just do anything. And so there's no proper accountability. And that goes to say that that's what happens with husband and wife businesses as well. And even businesses where you have two friends who give board chair to one, they give company secretary to the other. One is chief operations officer, the other is chief executive officer. There's likely not going to be much of transparency, especially if shareholder is same as board chair, same as CEO. Then how is that individual reporting to himself and himself like 3 times or 2 times? It doesn't work like that. So that means that in as much as you have fulfilled all righteousness in terms of the law, you are not being accountable. It means that you don't have good governance in place, right? And that also goes to say that in terms of transparency, there is no transparency because people are making decisions in the other's hindsight, and there is so much unfairness going on, because we said that one of the things the board do is that they represent each stakeholder's interest, and the company is made up of more stakeholders than you can imagine. The first stakeholder that will come to mind obviously will be the shareholder, but then the employees are stakeholders, the regulators are stakeholders, the municipal assembly you find yourself in, the people, if you're a factory, for instance, a food processing something, the people in your environment are stakeholders. Now, all of them have to have their interests represented on the board. If you had 2 shareholders as board of directors, then obviously we are only representing the interests of the shareholders and we are not representing the interests of the others. So what happens is that your train or your bus or your vehicle of a business is so one-sided, it's working on, or it's moving on one wheel instead of 4, and so clearly there's going to be a crash, so it's not going to move on. And so we said that if you really want it to work, then like I said earlier, is that you have a corporate governance practitioner giving you the advice and guiding you, and you need a person on your board as well, or the company secretary, corporate secretary, as some call it. That person has to be part of your board to guide you. They are also the censors of the board, because constantly regulators are issuing out new policies, codes, new communiques, notices, and we think that it's just about the law, the act. I've not heard of any passing of the act. But so long as these communications keep coming up, you need somebody who is tracking them for you and advising you accordingly. So you need such a person on the board to assist with that. So in conclusion, I'll just take us through the obvious importance. Because at each point I tell you how important it is to have the right structures in place. Obviously, it makes processes and procedures very easy. And if you have a company that has that system running and you have mentors, aka board of directors, then clearly you know that these people are experienced in the field I'm working in. So they are giving you the guidance, they are helping you correct. And I remember last week we used Kofi's yogurt business as an example, that if he had the right people to advise him, he had a board, or maybe he had advisors in place, he probably would have known that at this point, rather than shut down, I should do A, B, C, D. And so that's helpful. When it comes to managing his accounts, for instance, the barber shops, if they have the right governance structures in place or partnership agreements in place, they will know how much money should be paid to who. They would also pay themselves as employees rather than just take whatever amount that comes through. Now, when you have all of this rightly done, clearly it's going to lead to growth and expansion of your business. And I'd always say that this is one of the secrets of the businesses that we see now globally, the Apples, the Amazons, the Walmarts, and all those big ones. It's because they put the right structures in place. And maybe I'll give you a very good example for Ghana here. If anyone has heard of Petra Holdings Limited, Petra, the fund manager, all of them, it's because of good corporate governance that has brought them this far. So it's easy to see the benefits there, and we are talking about transgenerational growth and impact. We are talking about cross-border growth, where you're moving, not just staying in Ghana, who wants to do business and just be a local champion, right? And then it also helps with investor confidence, right? So people go out there looking for investor confidence. We have clients come to us sometimes like, I want to do capital raise in the next 2 years, and so I want to start putting things in place now. We'll do our job. You're paying us, right? But sometimes you have these investors really research into you and realize that this thing is just a charade. It's just something you're putting in place in 2 years. So in the long while, you haven't been doing this, so they won't trust you. But if you want to do it from scratch, then it's ideal because you have investors come in very easily and they'll trust you. And you also know that you're going to yield returns for them because you trust the systems, procedures you've put in place. You have the right people at the top helping with decision making and guiding. And it's absolutely amazing when you see how corporate governance has helped businesses come far. I mean, I see it a lot, and it really excites me. But in all of these things, we should also bear in mind that good governance can only be seen when it is consistently implemented. So all those people who have other people's names as shareholders, directors, etc., there are no board meetings, there are no resolutions, there are no agreements. I'm sorry, because you're deceiving yourself, you're lying to yourself. It will be easy for you to say, oh yeah, I have this, I have that. Should I show you my certificate of incorporation? But very deadly, very, very deadly, because we know that you're not implementing or you're not being consistent with that. So, Elena, I think I've answered your question very nicely. I have given a nice summary of everything we've discussed in the past 2 weeks. If you want to reach out about any question, or your case is peculiar and you want any form of assistance, I'm available. I love what I do, and so I like to do a lot of pro bono, if we should say. So gladly, I'll speak to you on that. Thank you very much for hosting me. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. I am excited. I don't know about you, but I am excited. The summary was a whole lecture. If you agree with me, put it in the comments. The summary was a whole lecture. And let me give a tip. When you go for all these business courses for business owners and all these certificate courses for business managers, this is one of the key things that they talk about. And this is a whole 6-hour lecture, right? It's a whole day that we talk about corporate governance, and she's giving it to you in 30 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, when you stick with PBI, you learn the important things that are necessary to build champions in Africa. We are not playing in PBI. We're serious people here. Thank you so much, Pesera. Thank you. Wow. Wow. I love to have questions to ask, and now you've simplified everything. I can't ask any question. What is this?
I'm just making your work easier. That's all.
You've made it extremely easy. Thank you so much. Please, if you have any questions, please ask it in the comments or just raise your hand and speak. I hear that now we are becoming bolder. We are speaking up. So please feel free and speak up. Abna is clapping for you, Keso. Abna is clapping for you.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Pini is saying free education in a simplified version. Thank you so much, all the way from Lesotho, baby. So we have gone international from day one. We are not joking around here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, remember to drop it in the comment section. But guess what? How long have you been doing corporate governance? Just a recap.
5 years.
5 years. In the 5 years, you've already mentioned one, which is Petra. But is there any other one that you don't have to mention the name? But is there any other business that you're like, they're getting it right. They're getting it right. I really want to stick with them.
Yeah. Yes, Elena, I have. Actually, this is very recent, within the week. And I was so impressed about this one in particular because it was one of the scenarios that I brought up when we're talking about what is wrong. Husband and wife shareholders, husband and wife board, husband and wife management, right?
Woo!
And they were incorporated in 2015. And they went straight, I don't know if they were sole proprietors before, but they went straight to be incorporated in 2015. Okay. And they had this go on until last year. They decided to go beyond themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they appointed 3 new directors.
Okay.
So now there's an external board chair. There are 2 independent directors, and there is 1 executive director, and there is 1 non-executive director. Now, it's just been a year, but I went for their board meeting, and oh boy, I loved it. You should see the way the chairman was questioning the MD stroke shareholder. I mean, why didn't you meet your target? What were the what were your determined what's determined your what did he say? I don't know, but he used some terms. I mean, what determined their target figure or something? So it's like the questions were going on, and you could tell that the MD was not trying to be brash or disrespect the chairman, like I own the company, right? But giving the right answers and giving due respect. And that goes to say that at the end of the day, in as much as if dividends are declared, it comes to her, they were looking beyond these two individuals, husband and wife, who own the company, right? And they had brought in an external person as a third eye who would question them and give them the leadership and direction that they require. And these were people who made this decision unprovoked. Like I said, there are people who do it because they're looking for funding, but they just felt that we had gotten to a point where we have to go beyond Mr. and Mrs. and bring on board people who would really guide us to make the right decisions. The board chair, when he's done, you pay him his quarterly fee or his monthly fee. How much would that be? But he's still giving you so much assistance that at the end of the day, really the benefit does not come to him. It comes to you. Right. So, I mean, I loved the whole process at the board meeting. It was absolutely amazing. And I'm glad that they had moved from that what is wrong phase to actually doing the right, not just governance on paper, but actually practicing the right governance. And on the board, there were 2 company secretaries. I haven't seen that before. Usually there is an assistant, etc. But this one, there were 2 company secretaries giving governance advice, and they're not joking. I'm so proud of them in advance. Wherever they get to, I'm already so proud of them. Such an unprovoked decision. It was a lovely one to see. Yeah, so people are trying to do the right thing, I would say. Well, others clearly are not, but those who are really going far with it, and it's interesting. It's lovely also.
Wow. I'm feeling proud. Like, I don't know them, I'm proud of them. Like,
yeah.
Yes. Well, that's lovely. Is there any board that you're on now that, given the slightest chance, you will just run away because you can't deal with their corporate governance issues?
Yeah, there are those. But maybe I don't want to give back on them yet. Yes, there are those that make it tough. Some people, so the family-owned ones, where it's mother and child, mother founded, passing on to child sort of boards. And there is one now that the mother is very old. She had time, she didn't know corporate governance. The son, who is the MD, is now trying to, get mommy on and all of that. Mommy is not budging. Interestingly, she's the board chair. She's the founder. I think I should even call her executive director. And son is MD, and from 2 different generations with 2 different ideas. The kind of board chair that will go to the regulator and say, "Hey, master, this is your law. I don't like it." So yes, we find them interesting. I mean, in my line of work, I meet very interesting people, and we laugh about it. We joke. We know that it takes time sometimes. Last week I said that a lot, that sometimes for somebody who, especially with partners, one is in on corporate governance and the other is not. It takes a lot of gentle convincing to get the person on board on corporate governance so that they can do the right thing. But it takes time. It's a gentle one, but yeah.
I have a question.
Go on.
About partnerships.
Yeah.
Because it's something I've heard so much, especially when they are talking about Ghanaian businesses. They say Ghanaian businessmen don't know how to partner. Ghanaian businessmen don't know how to share. And when I say businessmen, I mean all of us, both male and female, and everything in between. When you're forming a business with somebody, right? You and your friend are starting a business. How would you advise that, or what are the key things they should look out for when they are putting together a shareholders agreement? I ask this because I know there are different levels of shareholders. There are different ones that get paid dividend depending on whatever level of shareholder they are, whatever class of shareholder they are. If I'm starting a business with 4 or 5 of my friends, how would you advise that we set up our shareholders agreement so that, as usual, we don't start fighting at the top and then ruining the business because there was no clarity?
Okay. This is a very deep question. It's a lawyer would charge so much for this, but I'll try to break it down to the barest minimum. First of all, know how much everybody is bringing on board. Now, some people will bring cash, some will bring kind, and kind could be equipment, cash clearly, Ghana cedis, USD, etc. So first of all, know these things, what anybody's bringing on board. Now, while I talk about cash and kind in terms of equipment or land or office, some would say they are bringing on board sweat equity. Sweat equity basically means that I'm doing all the running around, I'm going and coming, and so give me shares. Maybe if I were your employee, you would have paid me some money, right? But rather than pay me, give me shares. Great. Now that we know what whoever is bringing on board, let's know the basic, simplest types of shares that Ghanaian businesses hold. There are the ordinary shares, and then there are the preference shares. The ordinary shares, their rights are quite wide. Nothing too much. Whatever you bring, or based on the money you bring and the percentage shares you hold, when it's time to pay dividend, that's the same thing we are paying. But there's also another class known as the preference shares, who sort of, when it comes to dividend paying, they are paid the first attention before we go to the ordinary shareholders, right? But the thing about the preference shares is that sometimes they are not allowed to make certain decisions or even participate in voting on certain decisions, right? But the ordinary shareholders, they participate in all decision making. Most people go for the ordinary shares because it's more straightforward. But even with the ordinary shares, now, like I said, the law is very flexible, so you can tweak it. You can create classes of shares within ordinary shares. So you can have class A, class B, and for each of them, the voting rights may vary. So voting rights means that when we go to an AGM and we are making a decision, I probably carry 30%. 100% shareholding, right? So maybe 30% of the decision made can be taken from me, 70% taken from the other person. What all of these variations, in essence, do is that they give one more authority than the other, or they make you co-equals.
Okay.
So when you have that arrangement, then also aside the type of share, what you are bringing on board, the type of shares, there might be some tweaks here and there. Even your constitution, let me say now that the constitution of the company, which is very important for corporate governance, can enforce certain rights and can also make people's positions very tight. So there are some shares that, we say that if you hold class B shares, right, you are the only one who can make decisions on A, B, C, D. And so that gives that person higher authority than any other person also. Where there are also votings where you can actually vary the rights. So this is not cast in stone, but the process is quite a long one. When you know what everybody is bringing on board and what their shares are, then you make sure that if it comes to dividend paying, then we know who is getting the first dividends. Usually that's where the misunderstanding is. Like, the money came, and you actually have to declare dividends at your AGM. Some people don't even declare dividends, and they go on to share their money. I don't know how they do that, which is absolutely illegal. We know who is getting dividends first, and based on your shareholding, we know how much whoever is getting. Then we can also talk about the obligations. Some shareholders have the right to nominate directors who would represent their interest on the board, because after all, that's where decisions are made. So if a certain class has that right and another doesn't, you need to state that. And then how many directors you can nominate. Some can nominate 1, others can nominate 2. You need to agree on that. So that's just, I think, the major things you have to look at. But very importantly, where the misunderstanding stems from is, I brought machine that was worth to so and so, and another person will say we did the valuation. When somebody is actually bringing shares, starting capital in kind, there has to be valuation going on, because we can always disagree on how much what costs.
Yep.
You can say you bought land worth 50,000 cities, right? But there'll be valuation to say, no, this land does not. And then there are a lot of valuers. You go to Lands Commission and you can get a value. Some of them are actually outside Lands Commission. You have to evaluate that. Sweat equity, I sometimes don't advise it. But if you decide to go for that, you have to find a way to value the sweats and know that maybe for this kind of work you're doing, it is an MD's job. What is your CV? You have to do all of these assessments. Where's your level of education, your experience, your qualification? Based on that, how much would I pay an MD at the end of the month? And so this is how much. Yes. So if you decide to go down that route, I mean, fair enough. I will let you do so. Also, another thing you have to consider is that now the law would say that each share is of no par value. The prices of shares or the cost attached to shares varies. Somebody can sell his share for 1 cedi, another person can sell it for 2, 3, whatever cedis. You have to know. An interesting thing is that sometimes you pay so much for about your shares. Maybe we have a company with 100 shares and I pay about 10,000 for 10 shares. Based on how much the price per share was. Another person has probably 50 shares and paid maybe 5,000 based on the price that the person's share was. At the end of the day, in as much as the person brought in very little money, because the person has more shares and the percentage of the person will definitely be higher, he has more decision-making authority than I do. Like I said, it's a very broad question, but I just hope that I have brought out some key things that you have to look out for. When you get there and you have shareholders agreements, I'm sure your lawyer would do something that is tuned to your company and your requirements.
Yes, thank you very much. You can see I was gesticulating when you were talking. It's because you were hitting the right points. So I asked this question because I know a couple of young people who are trying to come together and start things. Why we don't have money to do it individually? Great idea. But you heard what Kesua said. If somebody is bringing money, you cannot compare them to somebody who said he's bringing sweat equity. This sweat equity, can we evaluate? Because this sweat equity has become a big problem, where now they need to reinvest or they need to raise capital, and you have 20% for some sweat equity that was never valued. Bring money, you still don't have money, but you want to hold your 20%. It doesn't work like that. Business runs on cash. You understand? Unless you're okay. So let me not take that from Kesua, but from my personal experience, unless your sweat equity is intellectual property, something you have a patent for, something nobody else has in this world, I would not advise that I'd give you shares for sweat equity. Just don't do it. Even if it is 2 cedis the person will bring, let them bring it, value it. If it's half a share, you will give them for the 2 cedis. Give them half a share for the 2 cedis, because money runs business. So please, the young people out here trying to start a business together, sit down, buy Coke or Fanta, whatever, sit down and decide. This person is bringing money. These are the type of shares we will give them. This person is bringing this. We'll give them this right. This person is bringing this. We'll give them this right. And if somebody is only bringing money, they are not going to be involved in the business at all. They are not interested in managing it. Then you can give them preferred shares and not ordinary shares where they'll come and be telling you what to do. Get, and you need to talk to a consultant, aka Kesua, so that you don't get it wrong. Me, I'm saying it like this. It's not because I am a corporate governance expert. I've been bitten. I know. This is from experience. You understand? So they say learn from people's experiences, not your own. This is my experience that I'm talking about. Please talk to a consultant. They are worth every penny you spend on consultants. Talk to Kesua and don't end up in the same soup I ended up in, where you have to sever friendships because businesses didn't go well. Okay. Any questions for Kesua? Let me check my chat box. Like I said, I'll stop coming to meetings because now that I heard that you guys were chatting when I wasn't here, it might be me. Can you please raise your hand and ask some questions? We have approximately 4 minutes, and then I have to round up for today. Round up with Kesua. Again, it seems like I'm overpraising her, but this is a critical subject that can... What did I say? Sorry. It's quick to learn from your mistake, but quicker to learn from that of others. Yes, very true. They are very true. So learn from mine. Don't ruin friendships. And friendships are important. Don't ruin it because you don't know what to do in business. But I really have to say that this subject is critical to the development of business in Africa. And right now, we are trying to push entrepreneurship in Africa. And most of the businesses, the statistic about businesses failing in the first year, in the first 5 years. Some of them, it's not because the idea was not good. Some is not because the clients were not good. Some is because by the time it got to capitalization, they were fighting so much about who owns what that the business never went forward. Mm-hmm. You understand? So corporate governance is an amazing subject to talk about. Thank you so much, Kesewa. I cannot praise you enough, because what you've done for the people of Africa and everybody that's going to listen in the world, and hopefully politicians listen also, is that if you don't have the right structure, you don't have things properly defined, you're going to end up in trouble, and then you're going to have to fix it later. And then to all those in my DMs asking for investors to invest in your business, if all you have, like I said, is a business incorporation certificate, and you don't even have one contract with anybody that you've employed, not even yourself, not to talk of your board members, not to talk of an AGM, nothing. You have nothing.
Yeah.
Forget about it. Don't come to my DM. Don't go to anybody. Don't give you money, because nobody's throwing money away. Okay?
Yeah.
So please. She gave you her contact details. She gave you her what's her name? Her social details. Reach out to her. Now that she's doing pro bono, reach out to her, because you know me, I am going to go and convince her not to do pro bono any longer. So I'm just going to give you like 3 months. Please talk to her. After that, we are charging hard cash, dollars. All right. Miss Mbini said, I find myself likening corporate governance to the 3 legs of the state: executive, judiciary, and legislative. And it absolutely makes sense why there should be checks and balances in the system. I'm with you, my sister. I'm with you. I am with you. Yes, this is what is wrong with the world. The world. Thank you. Thank you so much. You and I, we're vibing from Ghana to listen to. Kesewa, before we go, any last words?
It has been an absolute pleasure. Very lovely 3 sessions, and I appreciate PBI. I appreciate you so much, Elina. Thank you for making this easy for me. I think I've given out all the juice, all the tea. I believe I've simplified it. Now it's left with our listeners to take what has been said and implement it. I'm available if you need assistance with that. But I want to see every business doing well. I want to see every business at the top. I mean, we can't be struggling for nothing, right? So all the best to everyone. Thank you so much. I love this. I hope to be back, as determined by Elena.
You are back. In fact, next week we are continuing. Mr. Doche, are you there? Should I say a few last words, or should I just round it out? A week ago. You can wave, or you can say no, or you, Mr. Doche. Mr. D. Steven. Kofi. Okay, he says bye. He's not interested in talking to me. Before I put him on the spot, ladies and gentlemen, this has been PBI. This has been the What is Wrong series on corporate governance. We've had with us the amazing Lovetta Kesewa-Doche, who is a corporate governance expert, and she has been teaching us and giving us valuable insights on what could go wrong with ineffective corporate governance and how we can fix it, and why effective corporate governance can lead to the success of a business. She's available on social media, kesewa.doche. Her number has been provided. Her email has been provided. You can give her a call to set up a consultation for proper corporate governance on your small business, on your startup, on your sole proprietorship. And please remember that your board is like your mentor. They're mentoring you as a CEO to achieve your targets. So don't be proud. Don't feel like this is my business. I gotta do what I gotta do. somebody needs to watch your back. You know, in Chi, they say the person who is cutting the road, or basically the person who is making the road, cannot see his back. And so the road might be slanted or curved, and that's exactly what a board of director does for you. If like Lovetta said, if you're a sole proprietorship, get a board of advisories. They're just people who you trust, that they have enough knowledge to be able to guide you in business. So until next time, when we hit up the next subject, which will be in finance and funding, I know you're interested. You see the way we did it, we brought governance before finance and funding, because finance and funding will lean on your corporate governance. PBI, we are the best. We are the best. Until next time, until next week, when we have a fun finance and funding, what is wrong on PBI Global? Have a fantastic week. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.